Welcome to the Nightmares Podcast, where we talk about everything horror. Today we are taking a trip back into horror history. Yes, past 1996, where horror begins for Mark, and past 1980, where horror begins for Zach. Today we're joined by Vinny, and we're going to be talking about the Universal monsters.
Hell yeah.
Specifically, the sequels.
Because those don't get touched on very much, do they?
They really don't. Other than Bride of Frankenstein, they're kind of forgotten.
Yeah.
But before we get started, with us today are, as always, Zach.
Yo.
And Mark and Victor.
What's going on, everybody?
My little payback for not introducing me and Victor on a previous one, not introducing you guys right away. But
Wait, why does Victor get punished for that?
Victor doesn't get punished. He's just an innocent bystander who happens to share a camera with Mark.
Sorry, bro.
Sorry, Victor. Anyway, the sequels don't really get touched upon all that much.
They don't. But you know what's funny is most people who know the Universal movies and are fans, they do. It's like they know the sequels. But yeah, you're right. They don't. And do you think there's a reason for that? And then
well, first off, they're not as good as the originals,
Sure.
like most sequels, except for Bride of Frankenstein, which is great. Yes, Zach.
I think Young Frankenstein is vastly superior than all the other movies. I'm just saying.
Here's the interesting thing about that.
I second that.
Young Frankenstein does actually work as a legitimate sequel.
It does.
That's
It really
why
does.
it's so amazing.
That's why it's so good.
It does. It does not touch or top the Bride of Frankenstein, in my opinion, and I will fight and argue that till the day I die. But,
All right, Mortal Kombat. After this, backyard.
All right.
Be there or be square.
All right, Young Frankenstein versus Bride of Frankenstein.
I think that is a good transition into probably one of the first sequels we can talk about, which is Son of Frankenstein. Because everybody knows
Totally.
Frankenstein. Everybody knows Bride of Frankenstein.
Right.
Everybody knows Young Frankenstein. But Young Frankenstein actually takes a lot. And you could actually argue it takes more from Son than it does from the first two.
Yeah.
Like, especially with Kenneth Mars' character with the robotic arm, the constable. He's straight out of Son of Frankenstein.
He is absolutely. He was Lionel Atwill was him in the
think so.
Sun, I think. Yeah.
And then, of course, Son of Frankenstein is the one that introduces Igor, played by Bela Lugosi.
Right.
Because in the first Frankenstein, it was Fritz, not Igor.
Right, and isn't that funny? I always think how most people, they always think Frankenstein's hunchback assistant is Igor, and in the
he didn't
original,
come until 3 movies in.
yeah, that's a hodgepodge of Fritz and Igor, Bela Lugosi's Igor, like
Yep.
you said. Yeah. What do you think of Son?
I like it. Of that huge like Universal Monsters Blu-ray box that I got that has like the originals, all the sequels. I think it's like 30 some. There's somewhere between 30 and 50 movies or something like that. Like it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I do think it's one of the better sequels, definitely, because like I don't really remember much of Ghost of Frankenstein or House of Frankenstein. I do remember enjoying them, but of
I'll
course,
rant about those in a little bit.
But of course, Frankenstein, Bride, and Son are the 3 best. But I do think Son is the weakest of those 3. It is also by far the longest movie in that box set. Like it's
I
like
think
an
it's
hour
almost,
49.
It's
or something
almost
like
2
that.
hours.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the longest of the Universal movies.
Oh yeah, when those
Yeah.
movies average out like an hour to an hour 15 range.
Yeah.
So it's like a full half hour than like the next longest one.
So how many just Frankenstein movies are there in total?
Oh,
From
easy.
Universal?
Yes.
Just Universal.
Let's
We've
think.
got
3,
Frankenstein,
4,
Bride, Son, House,
5,
Ghost.
6.
Then you got the Abbott Costello meets Frankenstein.
7 if we include that.
And then there's more if you want to count like the Monster Mash movies like House of Dracula, like the crossover ones.
Yeah.
And then there's of course Frankenstein meets the Wolfman.
Yep.
So if you're just talking about this string of black and white Universal movies, whatever count you just did there, Zach, that's what we got.
So we got here. Let me see if I can make this quick.
Yeah.
I got the first 3 that we mentioned. We got Ghost. We got House, and then Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Yes, he is in House of Dracula, but I don't know if I count that as a traditionally Frankenstein movie because sadly, I think the monster is the weakest in that movie. I mean, he's reduced.
Like it's not a Frankenstein movie, but he is
present
in it.
Yeah.
And it is a Universal movie that has the Frankenstein monster in it.
Yeah.
So it is at least worth mentioning as a footnote, whether you want to count it as of Frankenstein
Yeah.
movies up to you.
Yeah.
Because I do believe the way that box set organized it was if the monster appears in it, it's in that collection. So you do have repeats on the discs.
Which I saw that.
Yeah.
And it's actually led me, I need to rebuy the Frankenstein and Dracula box sets because the original ones I left for my parents. And plus the new ones I think are all digitally remastered and stuff.
Yeah.
But I was going to buy Dracula and Frankenstein, like the Legacy collections. And then I looked and Frankenstein and they both have House of Dracula and House of Frankenstein.
Yep, because Dracula appears in both and Frankenstein appears in both.
And the Frankenstein set even appears Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, which is on the Wolfman set. So
those Legacy Blu-rays do have repeats.
Yeah, and they all have Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I love that movie.
That movie's great.
It is.
Fucking A.
Dude, anything with Abbott and Costello, man, and meeting the Universal
Which-
Monsters.
Oh yeah,
I
tag,
actually
make all one
always
mashup.
preferred Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man.
Oh,
That's a great one.
absolutely my fucking favorite.
That's
Dude,
a great one.
When he's doing the fucking speed back, he's hitting his head against the speed back.
He even goes like that's a little like that.
Dude,
Yeah.
Abbott and Costello are just fucking hilarious. Like,
Oh,
I know
they're
there's
gold.
so many people who
These guys
like
are
to
gold.
praise the Three fucking Stooges. No, Abbott and Costello are so much fucking funnier. The Three Stooges are just,
I like them both. I love them both.
And
equally.
then there's the sequel to Dracula, Dracula's Daughter.
That's a very weird one.
Yeah,
because,
which that one's got like a whole tone of its own.
yeah.
And like I will say, if it wasn't for Dracula's Daughter, I don't think we would have the lesbian vampire movies, the late 60s, early
Probably
70s.
not. Is that
like
movie
Vampire Lovers, Lust for a Vampire, Daughters of Darkness, Twins of Evil. Like I think all those movies and that subgenre of vampire movie have a lot to owe to Dracula's Daughter.
Now, was Dracula's Daughter? See, that's one of the only ones too that really, to me, works as a direct sequel to the first Dracula with Bela Lugosi.
Yeah. Because like all the others kind of just...
Was that a pre-code era film? Dracula's Daughter?
That was 1936, I think.
So it
I
actually
forget.
kind of...
Yeah, so it's like right... I forget what year the code came in, but I think it's like right on the line.
Right on the line. Because, yeah, the just for anybody, I guess, listening, what the pre-code... When we say pre-code era films, that are like any movies kind of before the mid to late 1930s, I think. Because there was
They were
actually...
definitely in place by the time the 40s came in. I know that.
Right. There was a lot of shit.
Victor, what are you shaking your head? Do you know something that they don't?
Yes.
What's going on?
So the Hays Code, I believe, was adopted and established probably mid to late 20s. It was only because it was during that time in America that during the whole Prohibition, and there was kind of this whole reinforcement of purity. They decided to do that. So that's my take and whatnot.
I know, though, that they consider movies... For instance, there's a film I have, Sign of the Cross, from 1930. It's somewhere between 30 and 32 or 33. It's considered a pre-code era film.
Yeah, 'cause
Public
I
Enemy
have-
with Jimmy Cagney is considered a pre-code
I
era film.
have seen a lot of box sets labeled as pre-code.
That's
and
what
they
they
do have a lot of like early 1930s. movies
Yeah,
in
and they
theirs.
get away with some really, for that time, racy, risque, and even kind of dark and violent material. Another great example of the horror pre-code movies from Universal. Fortunately, it's not a monster sequel, so I'm not going to touch on it too long, is The Black Hat with Karloff and Lugosi.
That's a good one.
It's got a lot of real dark Satanist, satanic murder and all sorts of dark shit in that. But anyways, Dracula's Daughter has some, what is it? Some kind of
It's
racy...
definitely got some implications.
Yeah. And you even get the final appearance of Edward Van Sloan as Van Helsing in that.
Yes, I believe so.
Which, to me, that's why it really felt like a direct sequel to Dracula 1931.
Yeah.
Women in comfortable shoes, as Robin Williams would like to say.
So then we get, so you got that, you got the Son of Frankenstein, and then it's funny, there were sequels to The Invisible Man and the Mummy
Yep.
and The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Which I really don't care about the Mummy sequels.
You don't care so much?
I don't care about those ones at all.
Well, and it's funny.
I think overall, I think the original Mummy is one of the stronger Universal movies.
It is. Absolutely.
But I think it has the weakest sequels.
Well, and it's too bad because none of them follow that Karloff's Mummy. They almost like did like a soft reboot of the Mummy in a way. And
Once again, Universal was a trailblazer that nobody wants to acknowledge.
Right. Well, and it's funny too.
It's funny too because like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Like if you read the reviews for that one back then, a lot of the negative reviews are very similar to a lot of the negative reviews from Batman versus Superman in today's time. Because like it's all this build up for a fight that's only this long.
Really? Really?
See, hey, Zach, doesn't that sound familiar? That sounds like Freddy versus Jason just a bit.
No, Freddy versus Jason, you got fights, and that final fight was long.
Oh, dude, it just wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough fighting for me, dude. Like,
I don't know. There was a lot of fucking blood.
See, to me,
just yes.
See, to me, I guess I don't have any problem with movies like whether it's even Freddy versus Jason. I actually was a unpopular opinion. I actually like Batman versus Superman, and I love Frankenstein meets the Wolfman because to me it's more about verses or meets or whatever could be more about the story of these two characters meeting rather than just a fight. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that was what was cool. I personally think Frankenstein meets the Wolfman is actually probably one of my favorite of the sequels. I mean, again, totally not excluding Bride of Frankenstein and even Son of Frankenstein.
And then this is a little off-topic-ish, but have you ever seen Gods and Monsters?
Yes.
Excellent movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ian McKellen, oh my goodness. He
nails the character.
And Clive Barker was actually a producer on it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I just found this out recently. Clive Barker was either producer or executive producer for Gods and Monsters, which stars Ian McKellen and Brendan Fraser. And I would say it's Brendan Fraser's best dramatic performance.
It is. It's really good.
And it's about Ian McKellen plays James Whale, the director of Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and The Invisible Man.
Yep.
During his last days leading up to his suicide.
Yeah.
It is really good. McKellen.
I need to see this movie.
Yeah, McKellen was
a little sad, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
It's a movie that will stay with you.
Kind of moving.
McKellen was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor for it. Lynn Redgrave was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and even Bill Condon actually won for Best Adapted Screenplay that year for it. Who went on to do Dreamgirls, and he also wrote Chicago and Candyman 2.
Wow.
But yeah, it's a really good movie that'll stay with you. And if you like the Universal monsters, you owe it to yourself to seek out a copy of Gods and Monsters.
Well, hold on. He wrote Chicago, Dreamgirls, and then Candyman Part 2.
Yes. Not in that
order. I feel
order.
like Sesame Street, dude. Like one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah, right? Well, and what's cool about that movie, I think, in regards to the monster sequels, is I'm pretty sure when Ian McKellen is playing James Whale, he has a little moment where he kind of talks about how he got screwed out of the studio and a bit, and it kind of, doesn't it touch a little bit on, like, the studio system? And
I vaguely remember that. I think he was talking about his movie The Road Back during that one, because I know that was one that James Whale had some...
He had
issues with the studio on that one, but
and he even had in that
war movie than
it's a World War One film, right?
Yeah.
Or no, that was the sequel to All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yes.
Which is weird. I don't know how you do a sequel to that when the main guy bit the dust at the end.
Yeah, it's one of the most famous deaths in 1930s film history.
Right. Yeah.
And then
but yeah, it kind of leads me, just the whole thing, him complaining or having issues with the studio, kind of leads me to say this about the sequels. They are fun, but you do start, like you said, you notice the quality starting to drain.
Oh, yes. And I do want to point out, now that I've actually done a lot of more research in my adult life, I do find some irony in that James Whale is complaining about studio interference when he weaseled himself into directing Frankenstein by using the studio to interfere with Robert Florey.
Did he really?
Yeah, because Robert Florey was the original screenwriter and director for Frankenstein.
Wow.
And so that, like, how the story usually goes is like nobody talks about Florey, but everybody talks about how Bela Lugosi was supposed to be the monster and how Lugosi didn't like that.
Right.
That's kind of a very vague generalization of what actually happened. What actually happened was that Robert Florey was hired to write and direct, and he actually wrote the part of the Doctor for Lugosi.
Really?
But the studio wanted Lugosi for the monster because they thought that would be more on brand with him after playing Dracula.
Yeah.
So Robert Florey then shot about 20 minutes of test footage, about 5 or 10 of which actually featured Lugosi as the monster. And the cinematographer that Florey was using shot that test footage, and he was very much inspired by like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and like a lot of German expressionism. And even Lugosi, when he saw the test footage, told the cinematographer, "I have never looked so good on camera," or something. I forget the exact quote, but basically Lugosi ended up being very happy with how the test footage made him look.
Wow.
And so the test footage was a huge hit on the Universal lot, and this caught the attention of James Whale, who then went to Carl Laemmle Jr. and was like, since Frankenstein is a talkie, and since I have stage experience, which is important for these talking motion pictures, I think I should direct Frankenstein.
So they had never cemented Florey as the director? He was just the one they were looking at?
Florey was originally supposed to direct, but then Whale wanted it. And so then they took Florey to... then they moved Florey, his cinematographer, and Bela Lugosi onto Murders at the Rue Morgue.
And you said that movie, because of that...
he had so little prep time, the rumor is the way Murders at the Rue Morgue looks and the way that one was shot was how he was going to shoot Frankenstein.
So we could almost, like, if you wanted to really see what might... like a what-if of the Florey version, you could see
what really
that
stings is at first Florey wasn't too upset because he was like, okay, well, I still wrote the script, so I'm still at least going to get credited for screenwriter for Frankenstein. Only in a European release.
Yeah. Wow.
That's a
Well, didn't they change the script a lot from the Florey version?
Not as much as you would think.
Really?
I do remember reading about this. I don't remember the specifics, but I do remember reading like a lot of the actual structure of what we got was very much based on like some dialogue. Like dialogue may have been changed, something like that, but in terms of like actual structure, it's pretty much what Florey wrote for the most part.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, again, the look of that and everything, and just, it's very weird. Because, I mean, if you watch Murders in the Rue Morgue, it's like you said, it's like very much expressionistic. And it's funny because, the first Frankenstein, the Frankenstein movies, they retained a little expressionistic influence, as most of the Universal horror movies did. I've even kind of seen some things in regards to the sequels. I've seen some things that kind of point out that some of the set design of Son of Frankenstein and like the manor, the Frankenstein castle, and where he lives, is kind of expressionistic in its look and everything. Almost a little more than some of the sets were in the previous two movies.
And then move on a little bit because I do want to touch on all the major monsters.
Yeah.
There are the Invisible Man sequels.
Right.
Which I believe the first sequel is the one with Vincent Price, which was Invisible Man Returns.
It is, yeah.
And he was excellent.
He was good.
A worthy succesor to
Claude Rains.
Claude Rains.
Yeah, very worthy.
And it's amazing because like those effects in 1933's Invisible Man are still amazing today.
Yeah, they are.
Because it's like, how do you do that in 1933?
Yeah, especially some of the unwrap sequences.
And it's been explained to me.
Good.
And I still don't get it.
Really? Are you still? Yeah.
It's like it took like compositing like 4 shots together.
It took compositing 4. I finally.
I'm just imagining layering that shit right now, especially like working on film. It's like,
see, that's my thought. My thought is I get kind of how they did it with like they said that it basically they used black backgrounds if you had Claude Rains, the Invisible Man, unwrapping his head, so you want to still see his body, but his head's invisible. They shot him against a black background. He wore black velvet, like I'm guessing it must have been like a full face mask, or he was wrapped in black velvet, and which is crazy to me. I can't imagine how hot and how whatever, because you'd be wrapped in that and have the bandages around you, and you'd have to undo the bandages and still be wrapped in this black. It's equivalent to today when we would have somebody against a green screen and they would probably be wearing like a green
Of course,
like
we have
mask
like
over
digital filmmaking now and everything, whereas they were all photochemical, analog, all that.
That's what I don't really get. I'm always confused how they shot him against black. They'd shoot the scene he's sitting in. How did they merge those two shots together back then? Did they actually take the film and lay it over each other somehow?
I believe that's part of it. In terms of actually keying stuff out, I don't know the specifics and everything, but I know it has something to do with like the chemical baths that they put the film in. Mm-hmm. And then I do believe they, in a way, had to like optically put I don't know if they actually like taped the film together, but I know they like had to like do like some kind of optical process at some point that basically merges the shot. And that's why a lot of like lower budget effects in movies suddenly have like really a grainy look to it, because you are basically putting two film frames on top of each other. There's of course more to it than that, but it's an oversimplification, but that's what you're doing.
It's a similar concept to layering in After Effects. The only difference is you're doing it with real film in real time, just like, all right, we're going to put this on top of this, on top of that, and that just sounds like I want to try it. I would legitimately love to try to edit a movie on film, like strip everything together and do some effects like that, just to see for myself how much more of a pain in the ass it was. Just kind of a little historical thing. And I know it's going to be a royal pain in the ass, but I want to do it just to be able to say, fuck you, I did it.
And then there's, of course, Creature from the Black Lagoon, the last of the classic Universal monsters, who got 2 sequels.
2, yeah.
The more famous of the 2 is Revenge of the Creature.
Right.
And that's really more famous because it's Clint Eastwood's first movie.
Yeah, I didn't even know that until learning. I knew that he had a brief little moment in it, but I didn't realize that was his first like appearance.
Yeah.
Brandon, when was that? When was that movie?
That would Revenge of the Creature? That would have been 55, because I know those 3 Creature movies were 1 year after the other, so it was like 54 for Creature from Black Lagoon, 55 for Revenge, and 56 for Creature Walks Among Us.
Yeah. Wow.
What's actually is not surprising, because if you know some history about Clint Eastwood, during the 50s, he was a studio player, studio contract player. For Universal. So they would just back in when the studio system was around, they would just put him in. He would have a whatever picture deal, and then literally they just shuffled actors from like movie to movie to movie, and like you would only stay on that back lot, and they'd be like, here's your cowboy costume, here's your costume,
which is
here's
pretty much what Julia Adams was for the first Creature from Black Lagoon.
The girl in it, that's the main actress, right?
It's the one
She's
in the
right
white,
there.
the one in the white bathing suit. Her most famous role, most famous image, and she was really just like a universal day player.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I was actually reading in a book recently, in one of Joe Bob Briggs' books, Profoundly Disturbing. He does Creature from Black Lagoon is one of the movies he writes about in that one.
Oh, right.
And he says that Julia Adams was known as the actress with the best legs in Hollywood, but she was always in westerns, so she was wearing those dresses that covered her legs, so you wouldn't know it until Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Wow.
Irony,
right?
Dude, the Creature from the Black Lagoon is my favorite of the Universal monsters. That thing is so fucking awesome.
And both that and the first sequel were shot in 3D as well.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, and the sequels to those movies, I remember I watched them actually not long ago for the first time.
They're fun.
They're fun. Yeah, they're fun. They're a little bit, especially the second one gets a little bit, the Creature Walks Among Us, where they kind of turn him more, aren't they trying to like make him more land?
Yeah.
Like Creature and stuff like that at that point.
Yes.
And I don't remember why. I don't remember the exact. I think he gets in a fire and
yeah, I think he got injured somehow, and there was some kind of surgery. And that's the one that I really remember the least. Mm-hmm. But I do remember having fun with it.
Yeah, I remember having fun. I remember one of my issues with that too was there was almost like continuity things I didn't understand with those.
I don't
didn't
think they cared about continuity back then.
I guess not, because like the creature in the first movie clearly got shot, and didn't he even get like harpooned or something?
Something like that.
Something, and you know, you see him sinking, appearing to be dead, way down into the depths, and then he's just kind of back, I mean, I guess we could assume it doesn't necessarily have to be the same creature.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a few of them lurking around in that area, but they went back and they capture a creature in the second movie, Revenge, and I think he gets shot again at the end of that, and then he's just back again somehow in The Creature Walks Among Us. So.
I mean, you got to make a sequel. If you got to make a sequel, make a sequel.
Right,
And
exactly.
It's too bad we never got John Carpenter's remake.
I can't
Because
believe
he was going to do a remake
Ugh.
with Rick Baker doing the makeup for the creature.
I keep hearing
And
this.
they did release a picture of it in Rick Baker's book.
Wow.
And it would have looked pretty darn good.
Why the hell did
Sounds
they?
like it would have been amazing.
Why did they not do this?
Universal,
Various
probably.
reasons.
It's just funny to me. Like that would
I
have been.
think John
a worthy-
Landis was supposed to do a remake at one point, if I'm not mistaken. It's funny. That seems to be the one monster of the six that just can't get a reignition. Because like
Off
Dracula,
and round.
Frankenstein, we of course know those. Wolfman eventually got an official remake in 2010.
Right.
The Invisible Man got a remake just last year, which was great. The Mummy, of course, has had a few iterations.
Yeah, Mummy's had kind of almost like some almost like reimaginings.
Yeah, if you want to throw Phantom of the Opera in there as well, we of
Yeah.
course have many versions of that. So it's just a shame that Creature seems to be the one that can't seem to break
Yeah.
into a modern audience.
Unfortunately, the closest we ever got was in Monster Squad.
The Gill Man in Monster Squad, which is great. And then, but also, if it wasn't for Creature from the Black Lagoon, we would not have Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water.
I was going to say, there's clearly a lot of inspiration
Which
there.
the story behind that is, so when Del Toro was a kid flipping through the TV channels, he saw that shot of the creature and Julia Adams underwater, and he thought it was, and he just turned to that image. So he had no context, and he thought it was one of the most romantic looking images he had seen. And he was just like so mad that they killed the creature at the end because he thought she should have ended up with the creature, not with what's his face.
Guy loves
Shape of Water-
bestiality. What can you say?
So Shape of Water is his correcting of what he thought was one of the biggest mistakes in cinema history.
That's great.
It's interesting, but that movie just makes me roll my eyes for a number of reasons that I'm not going to get into right now.
Okay, then.
My opinion on that movie has been such a 180 because I did not like it the first time I watched it. Which I gotta agree with Justin's theory on this because I watched it when I was just about ending my time on the cruise ships. And I didn't care for it. And Justin was like, Brandon, you were probably just sick of water at that point. And when he said that, I kind of paused and went, you might be onto something there. And then when I watched it again, I'm just like, yeah, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed it. I love the artwork for like the posters and shit like that too. I was just like, hey, somebody actually gives a shit about their artwork finally. So.
Dude, the thing is, man, that like, okay, so Vinny's approach of the Universal monsters is the way that Zach approaches Predator. It's this purity thing. Like, he even fucking hated the new Invisible Man.
No, yeah, I can't stand it.
So
I can see that.
Cannot fucking stand it.
I can understand Vinny's perspective then.
I cannot
understand that
fucking
100%.
stand it. It has nothing to do with the Invisible Man.
I understand.
It is not the Invisible Man. It is the two-dimensional, invisible, abusive boyfriend, and that is all the fucking movie it was to me.
Regardless
I'm
of
sorry.
title, it was still a good movie.
The original Invisible Man's a better movie, if you ask me.
I understand his pain and I understand his logic.
It's pain.
You're
I've been
probably
there.
that same person
I've
who
been
goes,
there.
Michael Myers wasn't in Halloween 3, it's bad.
actually don't mind
Jason
that.
wasn't the killer in Friday the 13th Part 1, it's bad.
Well, part one, that's
Part
that's
one is
cool.
part one.
That's cool, though,
And at least
I thought.
Jason's in part one.
I think it depends. I guess like the
Kinda.
whole thing. You know what? Maybe this circles back to the whole sequel thing. I think it depends on which characters are your favorite and what are these characters sacred to you. You know, I bet there were people. It's interesting what you said about Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. What would you say again? people
similar complaints to Batman vs Superman today.
Yeah, and maybe it was. Do you think any of that was fueled because those characters, especially at that time, Frankenstein, were kind of sacred already? That they felt they were going in a lousy direction?
Because I don't know if I would say they were ever really sacred in a way.
Yeah.
Because they were really good movies, but I do feel like, because like when you do look at how much they were pumping out these sequels, it was like the studio just didn't care. So it's like I do wonder what the audience perspective was that, because like I said, those are just critic reviews.
Right.
So here's what I will say though is, especially the sequels that did manage to come out in the 50s, you know, the studio knew their audience. Like these were fucking drive-in movies. Like they were added in the same rotation.
The creature ones, especially.
They were added in the same rotation.
But those were also way after. Like Creature was way after the other ones.
Yeah, like 10. We're talking like a decade.
Yeah, so
because like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is a spoof, really good movie, but still a spoof, was 1948.
Okay.
And that was really the last that you saw of them.
That was the closeout.
And then there was Creature in 54.
Yeah.
So that's 6 years between the spoof and the last monster to be introduced.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, just to, before we have to, or I don't know how much time we have, but what do you think of, I guess you could say, of those original monsters? Now, granted, Mummy and Invisible Man never really managed to cross over with Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman, but those three guys...
I think a lot of that has to do with the Van Helsing movie, too, because I remember when the 04 Van Helsing came out, like, that's when they released, like, the collections of Frankenstein, Dracula, and Wolfman on DVD. Like, they were, like, those three monsters were plastered everywhere because of that movie.
But even back when they were made, they never... The Mummy and Invisible Man never met those other guys. They were always stuck kind of alone in their sequels.
Vincent Price's voice as the Invisible Man does show up at the very end of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
So the idea was there.
Yeah.
It's no doubt. But what do you think then of, to me, the closing movie of all of those guys, of at least like the classic, the original guys like Frankenstein, Dracula, and then the Wolfman is House of Dracula. Like, that is the true closing of that continuity. What did you think of that as a closing to those stories?
I really don't remember that one all that much. If I knew you were going to ask that question, I would have watched that movie last night.
Well, fuck. I'll throw out my kind of opinion on it. Sadly, I wish more could have come of the Frankenstein monster, and even a bit of Dracula, because Dracula's just kind of they don't really get a real ending. Again, the character to me who actually it does work as actually a good close to his story is Larry Talbot.
Yeah, because doesn't he get cured of
He actually gets cured, and he walks away with this lady that he meets who's working under the doctor, who kind of goes mad because he's infected with Dracula's blood, which that was kind of an interesting direction for the movie to take, which I didn't expect. Hence why it's actually called House of Dracula. But he kind of gets this full circle arc that when I was a kid, I would watch these sequels. I loved them, but I would watch them all over the place, all disjointed. I didn't realize that they were all connected until I got a hold of the Legacy collections in my teenage years. Which makes sense now, because I didn't understand. Well, wait, the Wolfman's back alive again somehow, but he's fighting Frankenstein again, and then it appears they get killed, but then he's back in another. Wait, what? It didn't connect to me until later that this was all connected, and I think it's considered the first cinematic universe.
You could say that.
Yeah, that's something else important
Once
about
again,
these
Universal
sequels.
being a trailblazer.
Yeah.
And then they tried the Dark Universe many years later, and
got one movie
Monsters
in.
and Evil.
Well, I think they tried that. They got this is what I can't figure out. Some people say they got one movie in with The Mummy and it already failed. But then some people say, well, technically Dracula Untold was supposed to be the first attempt, but
it was originally going to be Dracula Untold.
Really?
Yes. So that was going to be like the beginning of their cinematic universe, but that didn't.
And it kind of would have made
pan out.
sense, but yeah.
Because there is like an after credit scene in that one that does kind of like hint at. It doesn't reference any of the other monsters, but it does kind of hint that they want to take this more forward.
Oh.
And also, too, isn't Russell Crowe in that movie?
Well, no, that's the mummy. That's the mummy.
Oh, he's the mummy.
That's
okay.
the mummy.
The biggest problem with that movie though was that they hired fucking Tom Cruise, and like it was
That's what I've heard.
originally supposed to be like a more traditional
at one
horror
point,
movie, but because Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise, they're like, we're gonna just make it a fucking Mission Impossible movie with a coat of mummy paint on top of it.
Well, at one point, Tom Cruise was supposed to be Van Helsing, but it's somewhere that became the Mummy, and so it was like, I don't know, we don't have the time to go into my thoughts on the Mummy right now, but basically it was going to be the Mummy. I think Angelina Jolie was going to be Bride of Frankenstein. Johnny Depp was going to be the Invisible Man.
And actually, what's his name? Javier Bardem was going to be the Frankenstein monster.
Yes, and so
which I could have actually seen that.
That was going to be like the Dark Universe. I remember like they were pushing that Dark Universe brand. Like they gave a trailer, posters, a photo shoot with everybody, and then the Mummy comes out and just bombs. Then that's when Universal decided, okay, we're going to give the rights to these monsters to Blumhouse so that they can make more modern stuff. And that's how the Invisible Man came.
Right, and I will say, even though it's personally to me not what I prefer, that seems to be the first kind of successful
and I think they did,
reboot in a while.
And I think they did a good job because these monsters they belong to the world in a sense. Universal may own these specific iterations of these monsters and everything, but these monsters do belong to the world. And so it's like if you do want to bring them into a modern day, like an optics guy makes more sense for today than mad scientist making potion or whatever. As cool as I think it is, it's like I do understand.
I have a theory and an idea about that, but
sure, but there are ways you can do it and everything. But I do believe that if you do, like, I have nothing against bringing these characters to modern day. Yeah. But it's also if you are going to bring them to modern day, you also need to be aware of who your audience is today. Your audience these days are mostly if you just want to appeal to just like the super fans, you'll probably get your money from them, but are you going to make enough to keep going? And that is a question that studios unfortunately do need to answer, and I think they answered that question really well with Lee Whannell's Invisible Man.
And one thought real quick too, and honestly, if you want to see a better rendition of Invisible Man, I think Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon was a better version of more towards the actual
original
story,
novel,
rather than the newest reinvention of Invisible Man. I think it's a more faithful. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, exactly.
But well, I don't know. I will admit part of me gets excited when they keep mentioning of remaking these characters and stuff like that, and then there's part of me lately that just shudders because I'm just like, ugh, like.
If you don't make them, you're never going to get the good ones.
Yeah,
we had to suffer through Dracula Untold and The Mummy, but then we got Invisible Man. So it's like...
I would like to see them then just maybe, I don't know, maybe they need to try the Creature once and for all.
I would like that.
Because that, to me, that character you could bring... I don't really see how that would be hard to bring to modern day.
Yeah.
I mean, shit, you could take him into the realm of environmentalism.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really simple thing. You could give him that background instead of him being like what was he, like a forgotten, missing, prehistoric kind of thing that just you could turn it into that, but still really have a similar story and character.
I would love to see that. Final thoughts from the guys, Victor and Mark.
I don't know. I enjoy Universal monsters. I think they're awesome. I wish I spent more time watching the sequels just to at least check them out. But I mean, you cannot understate the influence that Universal Studios has had on horror in its creations. So I give a lot of props to Universal in so many ways in their respect towards horror and also towards cinema in general. So they're awesome. I've always had a deep respect for Universal Studios.
Hell yeah.
Squirrels.
Squirrels?
Yep,
squirrels.
Vinny?
Well, I don't know. I say obviously you got to at least watch the original classics, but check out the sequels too. They are fun, and I think they're fun, and I think I don't know. I just think a lot of them are pretty damn good, even compared to some movies that are being made today, and then some. And if nothing else, see it for the history. It's film history. You?
There are some really good sequels. There are some really bad ones. Movies. But yeah, everybody knows Bride of Frankenstein. Son of Frankenstein is also very much worth checking out. Dracula's Daughter, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, Invisible Man Returns, and Revenge of the Creature. Like, if you want a very quick rundown, like a very quick best of essentials.
I think that was a pretty good. Yeah, that's a pretty solid listing of the best ones.
Watch them all, but if you just want essentials for the sequels, that list right there. Thank you for watching this week's episode of the Nightmares Podcast. You can listen to all of our other previous episodes wherever podcasts are available. Also, be sure to hit that like and share button and subscribe to us if you're watching us on YouTube. You can also check us out on all of our social media at Midwest Horror Network on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and
Slasher.
Have a great day, everyone.